They threw me out with 2 suitcases and just $847 to my name. 6 years later, I opened the door of my $3.8 million mansion, and the same family who once called me a burden was standing on my porch, begging for a place to stay. What happened between those 2 moments is a story of betrayal, resilience, and the sweetest kind of justice. If you've ever been underestimated or cast aside by the people closest to you, stay with me. And before we dive in, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365, where real stories of family drama come alive every week. They didn't even let me finish my coffee. "Mom, we need to talk," James said, the way bosses say it before they slide a folder across the table. His jaw was set so hard I could see the muscle jump. Jessica hovered behind him, arms crossed, a smile that wasn't a smile. Outside, October rain tapped the kitchen window like it was impatient too. "What's wrong, honey?" I set my cup down on the granite I'd helped them afford. My social security checks had a way of turning into countertops and credit card minimums. "This arrangement isn't working," Jessica said, stepping forward and taking the conversation like a baton. "You're set in your ways. The kids are confused about who's in charge." Confused. I looked at the cereal bowls I'd filled, the lunch boxes I'd labeled. "Because I asked for please and thank you." She tilted her head. "Boundaries matter. I'm their grandmother, Jessica. I am not a boundary." James wouldn't look at me. He stared at the sink the way a child avoids a mirror. "Mom, it's getting tense. We all feel it." "Tense?" I laughed because the other option was crying. "You want tense. Try 3 jobs and an 8-year-old whose father left on a Tuesday with his golf clubs and a lie. Tense is a mortgage due on Friday when it's only Wednesday." "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, and there was the phrase I'd heard all my life. The prelude to cruelty. 20 minutes later, my life fit into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box that once held a microwave. Jessica stood in the hall with her phone, thumbs flying. A notification popped up big as daylight. "Deposit, $1, 200M, Thornfield retainer." She turned the screen away too fast. I pretended not to notice and kept folding my sweater. "What's that?" I asked, gentle as a nurse with a shot. "Work," she said. "You wouldn't get it." James carried the second suitcase to the porch and set it next to the first with the carefulness of someone placing a bomb. For a breath, our eyes met. I saw my boy, the one who used to leave dandelions on my pillow and cry when I left for night shifts. Then Jessica touched his arm and the boy went dark like a porch light at dawn. "It's raining," I said. "We called a taxi," Jessica answered. "It'll be here in 5. I looked past them into the room that had been mine, the bed already stripped. A paint sample card lay on the nightstand. Silver office, cool gray. They'd planned this long enough to choose a color. "Where am I supposed to go?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "It's always that way. The moment you need to sound big, your throat betrays you." "That's not our problem anymore," Jessica said, and shrugged like mercy was a coat she didn't want. The first drops hit the porch in hard, dark coins. I dragged the suitcases across the threshold by myself because pride is a muscle, and I refused to let mine atrophy. Behind me, my grandson's laughter rose from the living room, some cartoon, then cut off, and I wondered if he would remember me as a woman with wet hair and the wrong luggage. "Keys," James said. He held out his hand. My key to their house gleamed in my palm like something too bright to touch. "You could at least let me finish my coffee," I said. He looked at Jessica. She looked at the rain. "We'll mail your things," she said. "My things," I repeated and tasted iron. "You mean the things you don't want." The taxi pulled up with a sigh, windshield wipers doing their tired metronome. I pulled the box against my stomach like a shield and lifted my suitcases down the steps. The porch light blinked once. James reached for the handle, a reflex, then pulled his hand back as if I were a stray dog that might bite. "Mom," he started. "Save it," I said. "You'll need the words later." I climbed into the back seat with the gracelessness of grief, the box in my lap, my knees complaining about the years they'd served me. When the driver asked where to, my mouth said Sunset Motel on Route 9 before my brain had a chance to protest. It was cheap, it was close, it had a door that locked. After a morning like that, a lock felt like luxury. As the car pulled away, I looked back once. Jessica had already turned off the porch light. Through the window, I could see my room, their office now, open like a mouth swallowing paint chips. If you've ever had your family call you a burden, if you've ever stood in the rain with your life in 2 suitcases, hear me. Don't leave this page. Stay with me. And before we go any further, tap like and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. We tell the stories people pretend don't happen in nice kitchens with granite countertops. The Sunset Motel smelled like industrial cleaner and secrets. The clerk, an elderly man with an oatmeal sweater and kind eyes, slid a key across the counter along with an extra towel. "Storm's coming," he said as if I didn't already feel it. I counted my cash on the bed, $847. The number looked obscene under the yellow lamp. I wrote it on a Motel notepad and circled it like a bruise. I added a column, nights, and wrote $43 until my hands stopped shaking. The rain hardened. The air conditioner made a noise like a dying whale and then gave up on the pretense. I unpacked, which is to say I opened both suitcases and took out the photograph that had lived in my top drawer for 34 years. James at 8, missing a tooth, a smudge of mustard at the corner of his smile. I propped it against the TV that would eat quarters later if I wanted news. I didn't. Memory is a cruel cinematographer. It sharpens what you can't endure and blurs what you need. I saw the day his father left, a Tuesday with a sky the color of dishwater. "I'll be back for dinner," he'd said, and the roast had burned while I set the table for 3 and then 2 and then 1. After that, I learned how to do numbers other people hate. Rent vs. utilities vs. groceries vs. shoes that fit growing feet. I learned how to iron for cash on Sundays and smile at PTA meetings like I slept. I should have been ready for today. I wasn't. I took a shower that didn't get hot and wrapped myself in a towel thin as paper. When I went to hang my dress, the cardboard box slipped and hit the carpet with a dull, soft thud. The bottom gave out, spilling my archives, old bank statements, the church bulletin from my husband's funeral, a handful of condolence cards that said everything and nothing, and an envelope I hadn't packed. It was cream-colored, heavy, addressed in my husband's hand. I hadn't seen that handwriting since the day the doctor said, "I'm sorry," in a voice that wasn't sorry at all. The postmark was 6 months before he died. Tucked beneath the flap, a small brass key glinted. Safe deposit box 317 was stamped on a metal tag, the kind banks give you when they expect you to return something. I sat down hard on the motel bed, the coil springs complaining like old friends. The envelope crackled. Rain rattled the window like knuckles. Behind my ribs, something shifted, a gear that had been stuck for years. What else had he kept? What else had I missed while I was busy building a life out of coupons and double shifts and the belief that family, my family, would never put me on a porch and ask for their keys back? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Williams, this is Eleanor from the Small Business Development Center. Sarah at Mitchell's gave me your name. If you're still looking for work, I might have an idea." I looked at the key. I looked at the text. "Some storms you hide from, some you walk into on purpose." "All right," I said to the empty room, to the photograph, to the woman in the mottled mirror with rain-frizzed hair and eyes that refused to go dim. "Let's see what you left me, Robert, and let's see what I can make of it." I placed the key in my purse, slid the envelope under the motel Bible where no one ever looks, and circled $804 on the notepad. Then I drew a second circle around the first, like a target. Out in the parking lot, a truck backfired. In the room next door, someone laughed too loudly at something that wasn't funny. I lay back on the bed and listened to the rain teach me a new kind of counting, not what I'd lost, but what I might yet recover. If you're still here, if you've ever been told to figure it out alone, hit subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. I'm about to. The Sunset Motel on Route 9 looked exactly like a place life throws you when it's done being polite. Neon sign flickering, half the letters dead, parking lot cracked like dry skin. Room 12 smelled of bleach and loneliness. I counted my money again, $847 minus $43 for the first night. I wrote it down on the motel notepad like an accountant of despair. 804 left. How long can I last? The clerk, Mr. Patterson, leaned on the counter when I checked in. 70s maybe, thinning hair combed flat cardigan that had known better decades. "Most folks don't stay long," he said quietly, sliding the brass key over. "Storm's rough tonight." "I'll manage," I told him, but the truth was I had no idea how. The mornings were worst. I'd wake in that narrow bed and for a heartbeat forget where I was. Then the smell would hit, old cigarettes in the curtains, disinfectant that never killed what it was meant to. Silence too, except for the wheeze of the AC unit and the occasional fight in the parking lot. No grandchildren's laughter, no one calling Mom. I tried to make the room mine. I propped James's childhood photo on the nightstand, unpacked my coffee mug, bought a single plant from the gas station just to see something alive. But nothing covered the sound in my head, the echo of Jessica's shrug. "You're a grown woman. Figure it out." On the 6th morning, I walked to the library. It was free, and free mattered now. Free internet, free newspapers, free air conditioning. I sat at a computer surrounded by kids playing online games and men searching job boards. I typed part-time work for seniors, bookkeeping jobs, data entry. The listings were grim. Fast food, night shifts, jobs that wanted young hands and younger faces. But I had something, 20 years of balancing ledgers for my late husband's contracting business. Numbers don't care about age, I reminded myself. That first week I sent out 11 resumes, got 3 rejections, 7 silences, and 1 call. "Mrs. Williams," the voice said. "This is Sarah Mitchell, Mitchell's Garden Center. You listed bookkeeping experience. Can you come in tomorrow?" The garden center smelled of soil and fertilizer, a strange kind of comfort. Sarah was my age, dirt under her fingernails, blunt as a hammer. "Pay isn't much," she warned. $15 an hour part-time. "When do I start?" I asked. The first paycheck, $240, felt like a miracle. I treated myself to a second-hand coffee maker for the motel. The smell of brewing coffee made the room almost feel like home. But motel life has a way of reminding you where you really are. One evening, hauling groceries up the stairs, I nearly tripped over a woman passed out in front of room 14, bottle still in hand. Another night, cops pounded on doors, looking for someone who owed too much to the wrong people. "Don't worry, Mr. Patterson told me, pressing an extra towel into my hand. "You're not like the others." I wanted to believe him, but part of me wondered if that's what James and Jessica had said, too, that I didn't belong, that I wasn't like them anymore. 3 weeks in, I noticed the center's dumpsters. Every Friday, employees tossed dozens of potted plants, still green but wilting, into the trash. "Why are you throwing these away?" I asked Sarah. "Unsellable," she shrugged. "End of season, no room." I stared at the dumpster full of half-alive geraniums and ferns. Something inside me stirred, not pity, recognition. Discarded, written off, left to rot, just like me. That night, I lay awake on the motel bed, the AC clunking like a dying machine. My mind replayed Jessica's words, James's silence, the rain on the porch. Then it shifted to the dumpster full of plants, roots waiting for a second chance. And for the first time since being thrown out, I didn't feel powerless. I felt curious. The next morning, I arrived early at the garden center. "Sarah," I said carefully, "instead of tossing those plants, what if I take them, just a few, for practice?" She raised an eyebrow. "They're trash, Maggie." So was I. I muttered under my breath. Sarah smirked. "Fine, take a few, but don't blame me when your motel room looks like a cemetery." That evening, I carried 3 half-dead ferns up the motel stairs. Mrs. Chen from room 11 watched me with suspicion. "Too many plants," she muttered. "Illegal business." I just smiled. But when I placed the first pot on the windowsill, watered the soil, and touched a limp green stem, something shifted in me. For the first time since James set my suitcases on the porch, I didn't feel like garbage. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could make something live again. The rain had stopped that night, but inside me, something else had started. And I had no idea just how far those 3 ferns would take me. By sunrise, the ferns looked worse, not better, fronds limp like wet tissue, soil-caked and sour. I brewed motel coffee that tasted like apology and rolled up my sleeves. "Okay, ladies," I told the plants. "Everybody's had a rough week." I set up a battlefield on the little table by the window. Scissors, a plastic spoon, a cracked cereal bowl for mixing, the hotel ice bucket filled with lukewarm water. Mr. Patterson had slipped me a second lamp from the lost and found. "For your project," he'd whispered, as if we were smuggling diamonds. The extra light hummed to life, soft and stubborn. At the library, I'd fallen down a rabbit hole. Soil aeration, root rot, hydrogen peroxide ratios, how to coax life from crowns that looked like punctuation marks. I watched videos of gardeners with cheerful voices and immaculate nails, then looked at my hands, work-creased, capable, unafraid of ugly. I tipped the first fern out of its pot. The roots were a mat of brown spaghetti that smelled like a forgotten sponge. "You've been drowning," I said. I teased apart the mess, trimmed black ends, mixed perlite with potting soil using the spoon like an old recipe I knew by heart. I made a little crater, tucked the root ball in, pressed the soil around with my palm. By noon, I'd repotted all 3, cut back dead fronds, and talked myself hoarse. Mrs. Chen from room 11 peered in as she passed. "Too many plants," she warned again, superstition and concern braided together. "Fire code." "Just a few," I said. "Temporary." "You say temporary," she sniffed, "then it becomes life." After work, I scavenged the garden center's discard pile with Sarah's reluctant blessing. "Take what you want," she said, waving a hand. "They're just overhead at this point." I put 3 more pots in the trunk of a borrowed cart, plus a bag of expired fertilizer marked down to a number that made me brave. The motel room became a jungle nursery overnight. Towels draped under pots. Trash bags shredded into makeshift humidity tents. The AC unit wheezed at the humidity like an old man at a bad joke. I wiped condensation from the window and watched evening settle over Route 9 in a smear of pink and truck exhaust. On day 5, a miracle disguised as mundanity. The tiniest curl of green pushed from the center of the saddest fern like a question mark turning into an answer. I laughed. It startled me how loud it was. Mr. Patterson knocked. Everything all right? Growth, I said, stepping back to let him see. He leaned in, eyebrows lifting. Well, I'll be, he murmured. Looks like somebody got the message. Which message? That being thrown away doesn't mean you're done. Sometimes it means you're portable. He pressed an old desk fan into my hands. Found this in storage, might help with circulation. Air or blood? I asked. Both, he grinned. That night I slept for the first time since the porch, real sleep. Unstitched by panic, warmed by the little glow of the lamp and the hum of the fan and the sense that I wasn't useless. I was useful. The first Saturday of the month I wheeled 6 plants, 3 ferns, 2 geraniums, and a spider plant that refused to die back into Mitchell's. I lined them up on the checkout counter like soldiers. Sarah came out of the office, wiping her hands. Maggie, she started, ready to deliver a kind refusal. Then she stopped. The ferns stood like they'd been practicing posture in my absence. The geraniums showed a blush of stubborn buds. The spider plant threw thin green ribbons over the pot like confetti. Good Lord, she said. What did you do? Pray over them. Water, light, air, boundaries, I said, and a little peroxide. She bent to inspect, tugging a frond, pinching a leaf. These look new. They're not, I said, and then, because I'd earned it, neither am I. She bought all 6 at half the original retail, the deal we'd mumbled about like teenagers. She rang it up herself, fingers tapping the keys like punctuation. The till drawer slid open and she counted bills into my hand. 800, she said. 47. The number hit me in the ribs like news. I looked at the cash, looked at Sarah, looked at my hands, which weren't shaking, not even a little. You all right? She asked. Perfect, I said, and meant it in the way a surgeon means a clean incision. Absolutely perfect. I tucked the money into an envelope and wrote the number on the front in sharp black ink. $847. Then I put the envelope in my purse next to the brass key I still hadn't found the courage to use. On the way out, an older couple stopped me by the hydrangeas. Excuse me, the woman said, pointing at one of my ferns. Do you have any more like that? Ours always die. Give it air, I told her. Not just water. Plants are like people, they suffocate when you love them sloppily. The man laughed. You a botanist? Widow, I said. Fast learner. Back at the motel, I made a list on the notepad because lists have always been my way out of panic. Increase light, ask Mr. P about another lamp. Perlite supply watch for markdowns. Negotiate official arrangement with Sarah. Library research licensing margins seasonal cycles. Safe deposit box 317 tomorrow. Stop being a coward. Call from unknown. Eleanor SBDC follow up. I circled number 3 and number 5 until the paper thinned. By week 3, the room had borders of green. Mrs. Chen came in with a plate of dumplings and a warning about water on the carpet. My nephew allergic to mold, she said. Don't make mold. Boundaries, I promised. I'm learning. James texted that night for the first time since I left. A miracle of modern communication, 3 words and a punctuation mark. You okay? J. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. The old me would have typed a paragraph that apologized for existing. The new me deleted I'm fine and wrote, yes, busy. He didn't reply. 2 days later, Sarah called me into the dark little office in back. Receipts piled like snowdrifts. A calendar from 3 years ago hung crooked. She tapped a pencil against a column of numbers. You ever think about making this a thing? She asked. Official, seasonal rehabs. I set aside the discards. You revive, we split. 50-50, 40-60, she countered. You get 60, I'm saving dump fees. I sat there with dirt on my cuffs and the cheapest thrills in the world roaring in my ears, respect and terms. Deal, I said. We shook hands. Her palm was rough. Mine was steady. On my lunch break, I walked to the bank with the key in my pocket. The teller led me through a door so thick it could have held in a century of secrets. In the small metal room, she put box 317 on the table and left me alone with it, the way you leave someone alone with a coffin. I slid the key, turned, lifted. Inside was an envelope and a leather-bound ledger, the kind contractors used before the world went digital. The envelope had my name in Robert's hand. The ledger had numbers that looked like history. My throat closed, then opened, then closed again. The envelope first. It held a note and a cashier's check. The note was short. Mags, if I go first, I don't want you counting pennies. This is for the woman who kept us alive when the math was impossible. You never spend a dime on yourself that you didn't earn twice. Spend this once. Love, R. The check was for $25,000. I sat very still. I could hear the vault breathe. Under the check lay a business card, edges soft with time, M. Thornfield-esque. Family Law and Trusts. The name struck like a match. Jessica's notification on her phone the day she put me on the porch. Deposit, M. Thornfield, retainer. My lungs remembered the rain on the porch, the cold key in my hand, the color swatch on the nightstand. I thought of law and money and retainer and secrets you make deposits for. I put the check back into the envelope, slid the ledger into my purse, and walked out into afternoon light that made the whole town look newly drawn. The world hadn't gotten kinder, my footing had gotten stronger. Back in room 12, I set the envelope beside the $847 in the list. I added a new line in careful letters. Thornfield. The desk phone rang before I could exhale. Mr. Patterson's voice, low and apologetic. Mrs. Williams, sorry to bother. There's a man here asking for you, says he's family. My chest went cold and hot at once. Describe him. Tall, gray at the temples, polo shirt, looks like he's trying to be calm. The old ache rose, but this time it met a newer muscle. I looked at the plants lined up like a jury. I looked at the check, the key, the list, the life. Tell him to wait, I said, standing up and smoothing my thrift store blouse. And tell him he has 5 minutes to decide whether he's here to apologize or to negotiate. If it's the second thing, I'm not coming down. A long pause. I'll relay the message, Mr. Patterson said, and I could hear the smile he wasn't letting me see. Outside, a cloud shifted. A line of sun fell across the smallest fern, making the new fronds shine like a thin green blade. I took a breath that reached all the way to my heels. Okay, I told the room, the plants, the woman in the mirror who was tired of being polite. Let's see what grows next. Mr. Patterson met me halfway down the stairs, palm up like a traffic cop. He's in the lobby, he whispered. Looks like a man who rehearsed sorry in the mirror and forgot the second half. I gave him 5 minutes, I said. Then make them yours, he said, and retreated behind the counter, suddenly busy with keys that didn't need arranging. James stood by the coffee vending machine, the kind that dispenses something brown and calls it cappuccino. He looked older than 33, gray at the temples already, polo shirt clinging to sweat, an expression like a man begging a judge for time. Mom, he started. Don't, I said, holding up a hand. You're here to apologize or to negotiate, pick one. Silence, the machine hissed steam like punctuation. He rubbed his face. I'm sorry, he said, like the word had a price. I was wrong. God, I don't know how to fix this. You could have started by not putting me in a taxi in the rain. He flinched. Jessica, it's complicated. It's simple, I said. She made a decision, you co-signed it. He looked at the floor tiles as if they might offer a script. If I ask you to come back just for a little while. No, he swallowed. She said she'd leave if I did. She said, he stopped, eyes closing, shaking his head once. I shouldn't have come. But you did, why? He took a crumpled legal pad from his pocket and a pen that didn't want to write. Because I can't say it to your face without falling apart, he said, and sat at the edge of a cracked vinyl chair. He wrote quickly, hand shaking, lines slanting downhill, 3 pages. The pen scraped like a confession. When he finished, he tore the pages free and held them out, not looking at me. Don't tell her I came, he said, voice small. Please. I took the letter, folded it once, twice, slid it into my purse beside the brass key and the envelope with $25,000 and the business card that had started a fresh throb behind my eyes. M. Thornfield-esque. You could have told me the truth before you threw me out, I said. I know. You could have told your children the truth yesterday. He nodded, glassy-eyed. I know. And one day, I added, you could tell yourself the truth about the woman you married. He winced like I'd pressed a bruise. Mom, I'm trying. So am I said, but my trying doesn't include saving your pride or your mortgage. He stood up, then down again like gravity had opinions. Can we talk again? When you have something to say that isn't an excuse, I said, and when you've told the kids the truth. He nodded, throat working. Okay. He walked to the door. Turn back, I do miss you. Then you should have acted like it, I said, and watched him go out into the hard noon light. Mr. Patterson pretended to dust a fake fern and then looked at me, eyebrows a question. It's not over, I said. It never is, he said, and slid an extra packet of sugar across the counter as if grief were coffee. Back in room 12, I put the letter under the Motel Bible where no one ever looks and went to work like a woman who hadn't just been reopened. Plants don't wait for your wounds to close. They demand water and air and the discipline to cut what won't come back. By the next week, Sarah waved me toward the back gate with her chin. If you want them, take them, she said, and there it was. 3 cartloads of the unwanted leggy petunias, sunburned begonias, ferns with cardiac arrests. I loaded them like treasure, tied them down with bungee cords that once held someone's vacations. Mrs. Chen watched me ferry pots up the stairs with the judgment of a building inspector. Illegal greenhouse, she muttered. Temporary, I promised. You say temporary, she said, then it becomes rent. The room became a laboratory of resurrection. I lined the windowsills with trays, sliced trash bags into humidity tents, rigged a second lamp for Mr. Patterson's lost and found, and a desk fan older than some of my regrets. I made rules written because that's how I survive. Morning light, 2 hours direct, the rest dappled. Water only when the first knuckle hits dry. Peroxide flush once a week for the rot-prone. Airflow always, drama never. At night, I read the ledger from Robert's box. The columns neat as prayer. Invoices, supplier notes, a scribble in the margin, Kettle and Vine overcharging 12-18%, and a line that stopped me. Call Thornfield trust restatement, protect him if I go first. My breath snagged. The card wasn't just a lawyer's card, it was a breadcrumb. I dialed the number and hung up before the first ring. I wasn't ready to hear a voice say my name like a file. Instead, I called the number Eleanor had texted. Maggie Williams, I said when she answered, and it felt like introducing a character who might yet become someone. Sarah said you're a fixer, Eleanor replied. Come by Tuesday. I like people who turn waste into margins. If you've ever had to rebuild, I told the ceiling later, hit like and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. I said it out loud because sometimes you have to hear your own voice promise you're not done. February arrived mean and bright. The first buds showed up like punctual guests. Every morning, another green flag. I took photos before and after, sunlight and shade, and started naming them like a kindergarten teacher. The worst of the geraniums became Gloria. The stubborn spider plant was Frank. Names make things accountable. When I wheeled the first big batch back into Mitchell's, the young cashier with a nose ring whistled. These are the ones from the dumpster. They were, I said. Now they look like they cost something. They do. Sarah came out, wiped her hands, took one look and said, we should talk percentages. We did, over coffee that didn't taste like apology. 40-60 my favor. She kept the dump fees off her ledger. I kept my dignity and the right to say no to bad deals. On my way back to the motel, I stopped at the bank. I didn't cash the $25,000, not yet. I opened a new account with a name that made my tongue buzz, Phoenix Reserve. Minimum balance, everything I could save. I signed my name on the card with a steadiness I hadn't felt since I was 24 and certain. That night, a knock sounded on my door, 3 sharp taps, the kind that dressed themselves as polite. I checked the peephole and my stomach went cold. Jessica, perfect as a magazine ad, stood in the hallway holding a tote bag and a smile that could slice bread. Hi, Maggie, she sang, voice honeyed. We should talk. Mr. Patterson hovered at the end of the corridor, shoulders squared. I lifted a hand, I've got it. I opened the door only as wide as the chain would allow. How did you find me? Her smile sharpened. James has tells. Also, small towns love gossip. Are you going to let me in or do we have our conversation here next to a vending machine and a broken ice maker? I like the ice maker, I said. It tells the truth. Cute. She glanced past me and saw the jungle of green. So this is what you've been up to. How quaint. Some people rescue dogs, I said. I rescue things no one bothers to look at twice. She leaned in. I could smell a perfume that cost more than one of my paychecks. Let's be adults, she said. You can't keep making a scene. The kids are confused. James is emotional. It would help if you stopped contacting them. I haven't contacted anyone, I said. But you did. You contacted a lawyer the morning you put me on your porch. I said the name like a card on the table. Thornfield. Her eyes flicked just once, the tiniest tell. Don't be ridiculous. I have the card, I said. And I have the letter your husband wrote in my motel lobby with a pen that fought him. I have more proof than you have kindness. She dropped the smile. Here's my offer, you keep your distance. We'll send money, not much but enough for a decent apartment. In exchange, you stop the theatrics. Ah, I said, a retainer. She flushed, then laughed without humor. You've always had a talent for making people feel guilty for not being you. I don't want you to be me. I said, I want you to be better than you're being. She clicked her tongue. Are you letting me in or not? No, then we'll do it this way, she said. You're not to see Emma and Tony without our permission. You're not to come by the house, and you don't get to serve me rules in a hallway, I said quietly. You had your chance to be a daughter-in-law. You chose to be a landlord with bad manners. She straightened, the manager of everyone. Fine, have it your way, but don't say I didn't try. Try what? I asked, negotiating my love for my grandchildren. Her eyes hardened. You think you have leverage, you don't. I slid the chain into place, 4 inches of boundary. We'll see, I said and closed the door. My phone rang before I could breathe. Unknown number. I answered because something in me had been waiting. Mrs. Williams, a calm voice said. This is Attorney Michael Thornfield. I apologize for the late call, but your name came across my desk in 2 separate matters today. One concerning your late husband's documents, and one, well, let's just say your daughter-in-law is very proactive. We should meet. I looked at the door where Jessica's perfume still lingered, at the plants that were unapologetically alive, at the envelope in the drawer that weighed more than paper should. When? I asked. Tomorrow morning, 9. Where? You already know, he said, and I could hear the smile. Bring the ledger and whatever else you found. The line went dead. In the silence, a new fern unfurled itself like a hand opening. I wrote a fresh list and underlined the last line twice. Meet Thornfield, do not go alone. I didn't sleep much. The brass key lay on the nightstand beside the envelope with $25,000, the ledger, and James's 3-page apology. I set my old flip phone on top of the stack like a paperweight, as if a plastic hinge could keep my life from blowing off the table. At 8:30 a.m., Mr. Patterson knocked with a styrofoam cup. Fuel, he said. You shouldn't go alone. I wrote that on a list, I told him. He jingled his keys. Well then, I'm a man who loves a list, I'll drive. The law office was paneled in walnut and expectations. Diplomas lined the wall like trophies from a life where no one ever had to choose between groceries and gas. Michael Thornfield stood when we walked in. Mid-50s, calm eyes, a tie the color of certainty. Mrs. Williams, he said, offering a hand. And Patterson, Mr. Patterson said, shaking with the gravity of a man introducing himself to a judge. Driver and witness. Thornfield's mouth twitched. I've seen worse ideas. We sat, he didn't small talk. 2 matters crossed my desk with your name yesterday, he began. One is yours by right, your late husband's documents. He nodded at the ledger I'd placed on the desk. The other is a retainer paid by your daughter-in-law. Conflict of interest. I've declined representation in her matter. Retainer for what? I asked. He folded his hands. A caregiver agreement and a durable power of attorney naming your son as agent. My stomach went cold. So they could sign for me. Control decisions, redirect benefits, limit your access, he said evenly. It's a common tool when used appropriately, a weapon when it isn't. Given my prior work for your husband, I declined, but I expect she will find someone else. I have the card you gave Robert, I said, and the check, he nodded. Robert came to me 6 months before he died to restate his trust. He was worried about you counting pennies, his words. He opened a red file and slid a photocopy across Robert's handwriting, the same slant that lived in my memory. Protect him if I go first. Underlined twice. We prepared documents, Thornfield said, but he never signed the final version. He did, however, arrange that cashier's check. He asked me to make sure you kept it separate. Separate, I echoed. Not joint with anyone, he said. Not with family who might feel entitled. Open an account in your name only. Do not commingle with household funds. Do you understand? I do now, I said, and thought of my Social Security trickling into the checking account that had paid for granite and groceries I never ate. There's more, he added, tapping the ledger. Robert left notes about a supplier, Kettle and Vine. They were overcharging him and he was preparing a claim. There may be a refund owed to his estate. If so, it will be yours. Mr. Patterson whistled softly through his teeth. Not all the crooks live at the motel. Thornfield slid a card toward me, not his. I cannot represent you because of the conflict, but this is Sandra Lee. She's competent and doesn't scare easily. Call her today. And Mrs. Williams, do not sign anything your son or daughter-in-law places in front of you, even if they say it's just to keep the peace. I've seen peace overturned by a signature. I gathered my things. The ledger felt heavier than paper. What does Jessica want? I asked. With the POA. She wants control, he said simply. And to make you small enough to fit where she puts you. Mr. Patterson drove me back in silence broken only by the rattle of the glove compartment. When he pulled into the motel lot, he didn't move to park. You can keep paying $43 a night till the money and your heart wear thin, he said, or you can go spend some of that check on dignity. Dignity, I repeated. First month, last month, deposit, he said. I heard there's a studio above Jep's Pizza. It isn't walnut paneling, but it's yours when the door closes. I looked at the motel sign, one letter short of honest, son et, and something in me snapped back into its socket. Take me, I said. Jep was a man built like his ovens, square, scarred, always warm around the edges. The studio was 380 square feet of possibility over the smell of basil and burned edges. A window the size of a promise. A balcony wide enough for 3 pots and a stubborn woman. Rent $650. Water stains like maps of countries I'd never visit. You got references? He asked, scratching a receipt book with a pencil. Just invoices, I said, and handed him the envelope with the check copy and my first Mitchell's pay stub, and a very unreasonable desire to be quiet. He looked at me, looked at the paper, looked at his ceiling like it might remind him of decency. No smoking, no parties, don't flood my dining room with your plants. Plants, I said too quickly, he squinted. The garden center ladies talk, you're the plant lady. I'm the plant resurrection lady, I corrected. And I'll put trays under everything. He sighed like a man surrendering to fate. You can put a few on the balcony, not the parking lot. Understood, I lied. We shook hands. His palm was dusted with flour. Mine smelled like peroxide and resolve. Moving took 2 hours and all of Mr. Patterson's kindness. When we carried up the last box, he stood in the doorway surveying the empire. Looks like a life, he said. Looks like a beginning, I said. I bought a curtain rod and a cheap kettle with money that no longer felt like an apology. I set the brass key in the kitchen drawer next to the motel pen. I placed the envelope with $25,000 in a new shoebox labeled Phoenix Reserve because names matter. I wrote a word on my notepad, then underlined it until the paper wanted to give, Phoenix. By Friday, Sarah had 3 more carts waiting by the back gate. Take them, she said, not looking at me like charity. I put a note in the break room, nobody tosses without asking you first. 40/60 still good, I asked. She nodded. You're saving me dump fees and buying me a reputation. People are asking how we keep our stock so healthy. She grinned. I tell them we hired a witch. I laughed. Put that on a yard sign. Jep found me on the balcony that afternoon rigging a drying rack into a grow shelf with zip ties. No jungle, he warned, hands on hips. I got health inspectors, they don't like surprises. Me either, I said, we'll keep it civilized. He stared another beat. You feed me a good basil once in a while. Deal, I said. I'll make you a plant that forgives your overwatering. The studio turned into a disciplined mess, towels under trays, fans set low for constant breath. A whiteboard mapped watering cycles and peroxide flushes. I typed a 1-page care protocol at the library, printed copies, and tucked one under my pillow like a holy card. At night, I read Robert's ledger, learning how he'd tracked petty theft and supplier games for years without flinching at the math. He'd carried us with numbers, now I would carry myself with them. Then came the letter, slid under my door the way threats like to travel. Heavy cream paper. Law firm I didn't know. Cease and desist from contacting Emma and Tony without parental consent. A warning about trespassing. A line that dressed up insult as concern. Given your recent instabilities, I stood in my tiny kitchen and felt old rage bloom like mildew. I called the number Thornfield had given me, Sandra Lee, and left a message. They found me, I need counsel. Before I could sit, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, a woman's voice I didn't recognize and would never forget. You don't know me, she said, but Robert did. He promised me you'd call if you ever found the ledger. My name is Lydia Hart. The room tilted. Ledger lay open to a line I'd skimmed and filed under coincidence. L. Hart, retainer/travel. Why would I call you? I asked, keeping my voice even. Because Kettle and Vine didn't just overcharge, she said, voice dropping. They laundered returns through a shell and someone you trust is in on it. Robert and I were building the case when he died. Jessica hired a lawyer the week after his funeral. You think that's unrelated? Outside, a siren moaned and faded. Downstairs, a timer dinged for someone else's dinner. I stared at the plants, at the envelopes, at the key. Meet me, Lydia said. Tomorrow, noon, the park by the river. Bring the ledger and don't bring your son. The line went dead. I stood very still, feeling the pizza oven's heat rise through the floor and the air move across a fern's new frond like a whisper. I wrote a fresh list and put it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tomato. Open account separate, done. Sandra Lee call again, insist. Sarah expand Friday pickups. Jep tray system no leaks. Eleanor Tuesday SBDC confirm. Lydia Hart, who are you? Do not tell James. If you've ever felt a past you didn't know you had knock on your door, you already know I didn't sleep. And if you've ever had to build a spine out of lists and lamps and the sound of your own breath, you know exactly how the night felt. Bright, mean, and full of things that wanted to live. The park by the river smelled like cut grass and other people's choices. I sat on a bench with the ledger in my tote, the brass key in my pocket, and the name Lydia Hart like a pebble in my shoe. She arrived in a navy windbreaker and sensible shoes, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. Not young, not old. Eyes like someone who had learned to stop being surprised and start taking notes. You Robert's Maggie, she said, sitting without asking. I was, I said. She nodded toward my tote. He told me you keep everything that matters in paper. I keep what doesn't lie, I said, and handed her the ledger. She flipped to the back third like she'd been there before. He was right about Kettle and Vine. They padded invoices, laundered credits through a shell called Bellweather Supply, then kicked a percentage to a local consultant. Consultant, I repeated. Name, still pulling bank records, she said. But one of the deposits hit a household account that isn't K and V's. Your husband hired me to follow it. Why you? I asked. I used to audit those accounts from the inside, she said, left when I realized my job was to bless theft with better formatting. I let that settle. You said yesterday someone I trust is in on it. She studied my face the way surgeons study scans. Trust is a big word. Let's say someone with your last name benefited. James, I said, the syllable sour. Expense report mess. Similar patterns, she said. Different company, same game. People learn tricks from the same teachers. I exhaled slowly. Jessica hired a lawyer the week after the funeral, I said. Thornfield declined, she found another. Letters arrive like unwelcome guests. Of course she did, Lydia said. Control is a hobby for people with nice countertops. I started to say something cruel and thought better of it. What do you need from me? Copies of everything, she said. And don't confront them, paper talks louder when it isn't tipped off. And what do I get? Leverage. She said simply, maybe cash back, maybe just the truth. Either way you stop feeling like a mark. A pair of teenagers ran by laughing. The river moved like a thing that had decided to forgive rocks but not forget them. You worked with Robert, I said. What was he like with you? Smart, she said. Tired, out of patience for slow theft. He kept saying your name like a reason to keep going. My throat tried to fold. I unfolded it. My son showed up at the motel, I said. Wrote me a letter he begged me not to show Jessica. Don't, she said. Yet, men like your son need to hit a wall before they find a door. She handed back the ledger. One more thing, if anyone asks, you never met me. I'm not good at pretending I didn't see what I saw, I said. You will be, she said, standing. People like your daughter-in-law depend on it. She left as cleanly as she sat, a shadow peeling from a bench. I watched the river for a minute more, then checked my phone. Eleanor SBDC, you still coming at 2, bring numbers, bring attitude. I smiled despite myself. If you've ever been underestimated by your own blood and still found your way to a table where your math matters, stay with me. And if these stories are your oxygen, like the video and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. We tell the truths granite can't hold. The Small Business Development Center was housed in a brick building that smelled like coffee and pivots. Eleanor wore a blazer the color of fresh asphalt and glasses that made you confess margins. You're the plant resurrection lady, she said, waving me into a conference room with a whiteboard and a clock that ran fast on purpose. Sit, tell me like I'm a banker with a headache. I told her. Sarah's discard piles, the motel greenhouse, percentages, peroxide, the first sale that hit $847 exactly, second batch that sold through in hours because I stopped loving plants sloppily and started loving them right. She drew boxes as I spoke. Inputs right arrow process, right arrow yield, right arrow sell through. Then she circled process and underlined it twice. This is where your value is, she said. Not in the plant, in the protocol. I have a one-page care sheet, I said, oddly shy. You're going to have 60 pages, she said. Manuals sell better than miracles. I laughed a little breathless. I don't have space or capital or, honestly, enough lamps. You have something better, she said, ticking off on her fingers. Proof of concept, cost avoidance for your suppliers, a love story the internet will eat with a spoon, and a founder who knows the difference between a bruise and rot. She leaned forward. We're not building a shop. We're building a system. Then we're licensing it so other women in other towns can buy back their lives a tray at a time. The word licensing pinged around the room like a silver ball in a machine I suddenly wanted to play. How? SBA 7, a loan for the warehouse and equipment, she said, sliding over a packet thick enough to be a phone book. 47 pages of questions designed to see if you quit easily. You won't. We'll register an LLC. Trademark Phoenix Plant Recovery if it clears. Write a 3-year plan with reasonable lies. She smiled, not the kind that land you in handcuffs, the kind that tell bankers you've met ambition before. I touched the packet. It looked like a dare. What about my credit? I asked. I've kept the lights on, that's about all. We'll pull it, she said. If anyone's been adventurous with your name, we'll see. She logged into a portal and typed my info with the calm of a surgeon who'd done this 1,500 times. The screen blinked, thought, spit out numbers. Her eyebrows went up the smallest degree. Well, she said. What well? I said, stomach tightening. Your score is fine, she said, but there's a brand new store card at a home daycare chain in your name. Opened last week. Balance, $1, 984. I didn't, I said before the rest of the sentence found air. Of course you didn't, she said. We'll dispute. Meanwhile, we don't let thieves set your pace. Do you have seed money? I thought of the shoebox. $25,000 that felt like a sentence and a solution. I do, I said. Separate. Good, she said, and slid me a pen. Today you open Phoenix Reserve as a business checking, not a shoebox. Today you write down the protocol like you're training a stranger. Today you call Sarah and say Friday pickups are now Tuesdays and Fridays because your capacity is doubling whether it wants to or not. I like you, I said, feeling my lungs remember how to expand. You like anyone who hands you a list, she said. Now sign here and here and here. We'll make the banker earn his lunch. We worked until the clock declared itself tired. when I left. I had a folder with tabs, a to-do list long as a winter, and a feeling I remembered from the day I taught James to ride a bike. Momentum willing to forgive your wobble. Back at the studio, Jep caught me on the stairs with a scowl and a mop. Drain leaked, he said. 2 drops on a pepperoni, that's 2 drops too many. I'll fix the trays, I said, and I'll cater your staff meal next week in basil and apology. He grunted. I yell because inspectors have rulers, not hearts. Same breed as bankers, I said, and he almost smiled. The mail lay under my door like a dare. A thick white envelope from a law firm I didn't know slid out last. Notice of proposed power of attorney, my name misspelled and James's printed neatly where decisions go to die. My phone rang before the anger could find words. Sandra Lee. Don't sign, don't call, don't engage, she said without hello. Forward me everything, will respond. Also, freeze your credit today. I was at SBDC, I said. They found a store card I didn't open. Freeze, she repeated. Sometimes abuse looks like love with paperwork. I did as told. Clicks, passwords, the small relief of a lock you control. It was past 9 when my phone dinged with a text from a number that made my heart forget how to do math. Emma, Dad's in the garage looking for a brown book. Mom's mad, she said you stole it, is everything okay? I stared at the ledger on my table, brown and stubborn in mine. Me, everything's better than before, are you safe? Emma, I think so, can I come over Saturday? Mom said no. Dad said we'll see. Me, I'll send a driver who knows how to be invisible. If it gets messy, you turn around and go home. No fights you can't win yet. 3 dots, then, okay, I miss you. I put the phone down and sat in the quiet that comes when a house understands you're telling the truth. I made tea in the kettle that wheezed its way toward boiling. A knock, not polite. 3 sharp raps like someone collecting a debt. I checked the peephole and tasted adrenaline. Not Jessica, not James. Lydia, hair down now, windbreaker traded for sweater that said she belonged in rooms people paid to enter. She held up her phone so the camera could see the screen. A photo, my studio door, earlier today, slightly ajar, a man's hand on the knob. The timestamp matched the hour I'd been at SBDC. I told you not to confront, she said through the door, her voice low and urgent. But you should know, someone just tried to get in here while you were gone. Who? I whispered, chain still on, she swallowed. Your building's camera caught enough, not your son, not Jessica. Then who? She looked up, eyes steady, no flourish. Mr. Patterson. The chain trembled between us. The kettle screamed. And somewhere below, a timer dinged for a pizza that was about to burn. The kettle was still screaming when I slid the chain back into place. Lydia didn't blink at the sound, she just held up her phone again so I could see the freeze frame, a man's hand on my doorknob, the sleeve of familiar oatmeal knit. Mr. Patterson? I asked, tasting the wrongness. Cardigan, posture, profile, she said. I pulled the building feed from Jep's office, grainy but enough. He drove me to the lawyer, I said, as if facts could argue with images. He brought me coffee, he gave me a lamp. And someone paid him to add Aaron Boy to his resume, she said. They want the ledger, they'll want it until it stops being leverage. I looked at the brown book on my table. A week ago it was a relic, now it was a target painted in fountain pen. You said not to confront, I told her. Correct, but you also said you're not good at pretending, she said, reading me like she'd skimmed my margins. If you go, don't go alone. Jep, I said, he'll drive me, he yells at inspectors for sport. Lydia's mouth tilted. Perfect, and Maggie, move the ledger tonight, somewhere that locks better than your spine. I set the book in a tote and wrapped a towel around it like a baby you don't want the world to name. We went downstairs. Jep looked up from the register, eyes taking in more than I said. You look like you're about to do something that'll make me wish I stayed out of it. He said, we need the motel, I said, and 2 sets of eyes. He grabbed his keys and a pizza box. You don't go into a fight without carbs. We drove the 7 minutes to Sunset with the windows cracked. The neon sign had lost another letter S inset as if the place couldn't commit to honesty. Mr. Patterson stood behind the counter stacking keys that didn't need stacking. He looked up, saw me, and the color left his face like a tide. Maggie, he said, too bright, back already, everything all right. Jep set the pizza box down like an invitation and posted himself at my shoulder. Someone tried my door, I said. While I was gone, he blinked. Break-ins, we don't have that here, not since. I have footage, I said, of you. His mouth opened then shut. He looked at the fake fern at the stapler at the floor like it had a script. I came by, he said finally. To check on you, I knocked. I thought maybe you left the stove. There's no stove, I said. Just a kettle that screams like truth. He rubbed his temple. He looked smaller somehow, the cardigan suddenly too heavy for his bones. It was a mistake, he said. I shouldn't have. Who paid you? I asked. Say it before I do. He swallowed like he'd been practicing with rocks. I didn't take money, he said, then broke his own sentence. I took help From Jessica, I said, not a question, he flinched. Her friend, he hedged. A lawyer said you were unstable, said you took something that didn't belong to you and they needed to secure it for everyone's good. He said I could be liable if something happened on my property. This isn't your property, I said, and I'm not your ward. He stared at his hands, they shook like leaves that wanted to stay. My grandson, he said so quietly I had to lean in. He's in rehab, the bill came due. I'm 3 months behind. They said if I could just get a document, they'd make a call. My anger hit a wall and turned into something else. You don't choose all your betrayals, sometimes they recruit you. I brought you lamps, he whispered. I took you to the lawyer. I thought I was helping you stand up. I didn't plan to. God, Mags, I've never been that kind of man. Jep slid the pizza box closer as if starch could hold a room together. How much? He asked. Patterson shrugged, shame up to his ears. 600 now, he said, promise of more if I delivered. I didn't get in. You won't, I said, the steal surprising even me. Not again. He nodded like a man who'd heard his sentence and found it fair. I'm sorry, he said. It doesn't help, but I am. It helps exactly this much, I said, pinching air. You call whoever called you and tell them you don't have what they want, then you never take their calls again. I leaned in until he had to meet my eyes. And you never stand by a door with my name on it unless I invited you. He nodded, eyes glossy. Understood. And Patterson, Jep added, voice like gravel. You try to be different starting now. When we walked back to the car, I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, because I was tired of letting other people spend my water. In Jep's passenger seat, I texted Sandra Lee, motel clerk compromised. Jessica's counsel pulling strings. Ledger targeted. She replied in under a minute. Move it to a bank. Tonight, do not keep it at your residence. It was the kind of order that makes you feel taken care of. We drove straight to the bank. The night manager recognized panic when he saw it and hustled us to a vault room that smelled like nickels and procedure. I used Robert's key to open box 317 again. This time the ledger slid onto the velvet shelf with a sound like relief. I left the envelope with the check, the note, the business card. I added a list with Sandra's number. Sometimes safety is redundancy. Outside, Lydia waited on the sidewalk with her hands in her pockets, watching the street the way dogs watch doors. Good, she said when she saw my empty tote. Now let's build your life like you expect visitors with bolt cutters. The next days turned into a drill. Freeze credit, new locks, a cheap camera for the studio, a sign on the door that said delivery hours 10-4 because boundaries read better in block letters. Eleanor called twice a day with lists that felt like rungs. Register LLC, file for EIN. Open Phoenix Reserve as a real account, not a shoebox. Write down your process, she said. Pretend you're training someone you don't trust. I'm not a teacher, I said. You are now, she said. Miracles don't scale, protocols do. So I wrote, assess, trim, repot, recover, air, light, water, patience. I refused to call it a miracle. It was work plus mercy. It was the opposite of how I'd been treated. Sarah upped the pickups to Tuesdays and Fridays. The cash started to behave like it wasn't embarrassed to be seen. Jep built me a bench out of scrap plywood and threatened to charge rent for pots that strayed into the parking lot. Boundaries, he said, and I pretended to scowl. I hired a helper, Tommy Martinez, 19, quiet, with hands that knew when to hold and when to leave things alone. He showed up in a patched hoodie and stood by a geranium for a full minute without touching it. What are you waiting for? I asked. For it to tell me what it wants, he said, and I handed him a trowel. In the evenings, I drafted the Phoenix manual. Tommy tested the steps and told me where my brain assumed things my hands had to learn. It felt like building a bridge while you walked it. It held. Sandra Lee moved like weather. A formal response went out to the law firm that thought saying instability with enough italics would make it true. She filed notices, flagged the fraud on the Dacre card, sent a letter to James that started with, "My client will not," and ended with, "Any further contact must be through counsel." It was delicious. Emma texted under a blanket in her closet like a spy. "Mom says you're stirring up trouble." I sent a picture of my hands dirty to the wrists and typed, "Turns out trouble is my best angle." She sent back a heart that felt like an oath. Wednesday, Eleanor called with a grin in her voice. "Prequel on the SBA," she said. "Conditional. They want collateral and proof your margins aren't fiction." "My margins are insulted, you asked," I said, surprising myself. "Good," she said. "Be ready to explain your gross to net like you're breaking up with someone who wants alimony. Also, your name's clean except for that Dacre card. We'll get it off. Tell your bank any incoming checks over 5 figures go to Phoenix, not personal. Repeat after me, separation is salvation." I repeated it until my tongue knew the steps. Friday night, the studio felt almost like a home that trusted you not to drop it. I brewed tea, wrote down the week's totals, and allowed myself 10 seconds of quiet pride. That's when the balcony light flickered. Tommy stuck his head in. Maggie," I went out. On the bench, 3 of my best ferns had been tipped. Soil all over the deck like someone had clawed through it looking for a secret. On the middle pot, a note stabbed into the dirt with a steak knife. Put the book back. No signature, no flourish, just ink and a knife dull with intent. I didn't pick it up. I didn't say what I wanted to say. I turned to Tommy. "Remember how I told you the first rule is air?" I said. He nodded, wide-eyed. "New rule, document everything." I took pictures from 3 angles, close-ups of the knife, the tear in the humidity tent, the soil pattern that said someone's patience had run out before their greed did. We took the pots inside and set them on towels. I vacuumed dirt like a woman who refused to apologize for messes other people made. My phone buzzed. "Unknown, last warning. Family keeps family safe. Don't make this worse." A second later, "Emma, Dad's been weird. Mom's talking to a consultant. Should I still come Saturday?" I stared at the knife in my pot and the heart on my screen and the list on my fridge that said "Do not tell James" like a mantra. "Jep," I called down the stairwell. "Do me a favor. Sleep with your bat by the door." He yelled back, "It never left." I texted Emma, "Yes, come, you'll have a driver and a code to get up. If anything feels wrong, you go home. No speeches, no fights, just ankles and elbows." She sent back a laughing emoji and then, "What's the code?" I gave her 4 numbers I hadn't used in years, the date her father left. It felt like setting a bone. And then I did what you do when people you love are in the crosshairs. I watered what could be saved, I slid the chain into place, and I stared at the note without touching it until the words blurred and sharpened again. If you've ever rebuilt a life while someone rattled a lock they thought they owned, hit like and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. The next day at noon, a car would pull up to my curb with the only 2 people in this story who hadn't lied to me yet. And somebody, somewhere not nearly far enough away, had run out of patience. Caleb's text sat on my screen like a confession that wanted company. "Tell Jessica I'm done covering her. If she calls again, I take everybody down with her." See, I forwarded it to Sandra and Lydia. Sandra replied in 10 seconds, "Don't engage, we set a meeting on our turf. Recorded, limited proffer." Lydia, 10 seconds after that, "He's slippery. Bring witnesses, not hope." Morning broke like a plate. I watered what hadn't been knocked over the night before, swept soil into a dustpan with a calm I had to rent by the hour, and met Eleanor at the SBDC to proof the SBA packet. "Your margins look like they eat cynics for breakfast," she said. "Red pen tapping process, right arrow yield, right arrow sell through. But we still need letters. Loy, evidence this isn't just you." "Sarah's drafting one," I said. 2 other centers called after they heard about the resuscitations. I told them to put it on letterhead or it doesn't exist. "Good," she said. "Bankers are allergic to adjectives." At noon, Sandra texted a location that smelled like liability insurance, glass walls, good coffee, a conference room that had watched men win and lose things they were sure were theirs. Caleb arrived in a jacket that cost what a month of rent used to, jaw set, eyes scanning for exits. "You're recording?" he asked, glancing at Sandra's phone on the table. "Yes," Sandra said. "You're here voluntarily, you can leave any time, you admit to nothing. You lie and I walk you into perjury so fast your shoes smoke." He almost smiled. "I like her." "You like anyone who thinks as fast as you do," Lydia said, sliding a folder between them. "Names, dates, how Bellweather routes credits, how Kettle and Vine invoices twice and washes the second through a consultant." She flicked her eyes to him. "And who the consultant is." He watched me for an answer I wasn't offering. "Jessica's not built for long games," he said finally. "She's built for winning the moment. The CFO at K&V Collier wanted numbers to look a certain way. I reduced friction. Jessica got a taste of cash flow without a CFO. Your son needed money when his expenses outpaced his salary." "Kickbacks hit which account?" Sandra asked. He hesitated. "A household checking," he said. "Not K&V's, not Bellwether's. Name on it reads J and J Williams." My stomach dropped like a floor you trusted too long. "They used their own family account for dirty money," I said. "Brilliant." "Sloppy," Lydia corrected. "Brilliant gets you indicted slower." Caleb slid his phone across. Photos, screenshots, a cashier's check for $12, $500 to a boutique firm, date stamped the week Emma's college fund tanked. Jessica and the banker smiling like charity workers after a ribbon cutting. "You wanted money," I said. He shook his head. "I want out," he said. "And I want you to tell Jessica, this is me doing her a favor if she keeps calling me. I tell Collier I kept everything. He'll turn on her to save his skin." Sandra's pen hovered. "One more thing," she said. "You or anyone you know hired a process server to abuse a guardianship petition." I told her it was dumb, he said, the contempt barely covered. "She likes paperwork that sounds like power." The recorders stayed on while he signed a short statement, Sandra reading every sentence aloud like a nurse reading meds to a patient under anesthesia. When he stood, he looked smaller. Men do that when the story isn't theirs anymore. You think James flips? Lydia asked when he left. He bends easy, Caleb said at the door. That's how he broke. At Mitchell's, Sarah handed me a letter on heavy paper that made my chest feel bigger. To whom it may concern, we commit to deliver all unsold season-end plant stock to Phoenix Plant Recovery for rehabilitation and repurchase at agreed margins. Tuesdays and Fridays, minimum 18 months. Signature, date, a small dignity that bank committees respect more than tears. Eleanor took a photo before the ink dried. 2 more like this, she said, and the SBA is ours. My phone buzzed as if it had a quota. Bank Phoenix Reserve, account temporarily restricted due to pending guardianship filing. The worst kind of sentence, tidy, bloodless. I was at the branch in 13 minutes. Hair still pinned the way you pin a problem to a board. The manager put on the face bankers wear when they know they're about to be the villain. Ma'am, we received a notice. Filed, not granted, I said. My attorney's en route with a judge's email address. Do not make me a lesson in your training manual. He disappeared, reappeared, apologized in the key of legal. By the time Sandra strode in, the restriction had been lifted, a sticky note pasted to the screen like a throat clearing. Separation is salvation. Phoenix Reserve remained clean. My personal stayed small and lawful. I breathed again. On the sidewalk, James leaned against a Civic that had seen better grace. He startled when he saw me, like he hadn't planned the part where I walked out and made him a person in public. Mom, he said. Don't, I said, the word familiar in my mouth now. If you're here to apologize, I accept words and actions. If you're here to negotiate, I'm out of budget. I didn't call CPS, he blurted, hands up. That was Jess. I didn't even know about the process server until he was on the porch. And the card, the Dacre card, that was. Stolen, I said, from me. His face collapsed and then recovered badly. Jess said we'd pay it down. She said you wouldn't even notice. I notice, I said, everything. He scrubbed a hand over his face. He looked like he hadn't slept anywhere a human being should. Mortgage is 2 months behind, he said. I'm trying to fix it. I called the bank about a modification. They laughed in email. Could we, Mom? Just could we stay with you? Just until I... No, I said, not loud, not cruel, just true. Emma and Tony, yes, you and Jessica know. You tell them the truth, you get your house in order, you stop letting people use my name to pad your life. Then maybe we can talk about casseroles. He flinched. I wrote you that letter, he said. At the motel, you still have it. I do, I said. It's the only thing you own that you didn't let someone else sign. He swallowed. Emma wants to see you again today. That part is easy, I said. The rest isn't. He nodded like a man agreeing to weather. Caleb texted me, he added, eyes flicking to the side. He wants me to stop being reachable. It's late for that, I know. Late is still not never, I said, and walked away because mercy needs limits or it becomes permission. Back at the studio, Jep met me at the door with an official and a clipboard. Fire inspector, he muttered. Anonymous complaint. Anonymous, the inspector repeated, bored. Greenery interfering with egress, water near electrical. We did the dance. Trays, distances, cords off floors, fans on GFCI. He wrote compliant harder than necessary and left like men do when they wanted a fight and found a checklist. Boundaries, Jep said, tapping the door jamb with his knuckles. Rulers have their uses. I texted Eleanor a photo of the compliant note. She responded with confetti I pretended not to like. Then she sent an address. Warehouse, she wrote. Cheap because it used to be a florist's graveyard. 2 roll-ups. Good bones. Owner old money. Bring letters, bring your face. The warehouse sat behind a shuttered grocery like a secret stage. Skylights, drains, a scuffed concrete floor that wanted stories. The owner arrived 10 minutes late in a coat older than me and better cut. Victoria Harrison, her card said, hands soft, eyes not. I don't rent to people who confuse passion with a plan, she said, a test disguised as a sentence. Plans in the folder, I said, handing her LOIs and margins and a photo of the $847 envelope next to a fern that had outlived its own obituary. Passions in the plants. She leafed through the papers without hurry. Why Phoenix? She asked. Because some trash is just potential with bad marketing, I said. She smiled. Lease is month to month until the SBA comes through. First month and deposit today. I reached for my phone to authorize the transfer. The part of me that remembers poverty still surprised when money does what it's told. The screen lit with a text from Sandra. Court denied ex parte. Guardianship off the table for now. Focus on the warehouse. Done, I told Harrison. Wire incoming. We were shaking hands when a car slid into the lot the way people slide into a story when they're late and want to catch up by interrupting. Jessica, hair perfect. sunglasses that cost more than my first car. Stepping out with a man I didn't recognize, tanned, brittle, carrying a leather folio like a weapon. Not Caleb, a broker. Mrs. Harrison, Jessica called, bright as poison. So glad we caught you. We'd like to make an offer to lease the space and can pay 6 months up front. Harrison didn't turn. Some people think money is a synonym for character, she said, not quiet. I don't, Jessica's smile held. We're family friends, she lied easily. James and I. Harrison finally faced her. I know exactly who you are, she said. I read the paper. I also answered my phone when Attorney Lee called to say your emergency petition was denied and that you like using law like it's furniture. She nodded toward me. And this woman brought me a plan, not a credit card. Jessica's jaw tightened. The broker cleared his throat. Perhaps we could. You could leave, Harrison said pleasantly. Before I remember, I prefer quiet tenants. Jessica pivoted to me with a look that would have melted cheaper women. You're unwell, Maggie, she said softly, just for us. Everyone sees it but you. Then why do you want my name so badly? I asked. Her mouth ticked. She turned on a heel that had never known a discount and left with the broker jogging behind like a narrative footnote. Harrison watched them go. You'll be interesting, she said. Don't make me regret it. Back at the studio, the wire sent, the lease in a folder that suddenly felt like armor. I found an envelope under my door without a stamp. Inside, a photocopy of a check, amount $3,800,000, payee line blank. Memo Harrison Estate cash offer. No bank watermark. No signature. A note attached in a handwriting I knew better than my own. You want a house on a hill, make them walk up to apologize. I sat down because standing felt like lying. The check wasn't real, not yet, but it was a dare across years. Robert's ledger had mapped numbers. This was him mapping nerve. My phone vibrated itself into the table. Emma, Mom's pacing, Dad's pacing. Tony said there's a letter on the kitchen counter with your name on it. Should we bring it? Bring it, I typed. Don't read it, not yet. 3 dots, then we're on our way. There's a car behind us. Black SUV, no plates. I stood, my blood turning practical. Jeb, I called down the stairs. Reading hour, lock the back. He didn't ask questions. He threw the bolt. I checked the camera feed. A black SUV idled at the corner like appetite. My front door buzzed once, twice, and then a voice through the metal, warm and professional. MS, Williams, Millbrook County Sheriff. We have a warrant to search for stolen financial records. I looked at the vault receipt in my wallet with box 317 stamped clean and lawful. I looked at my plants, my lists, my life. Then I looked at the stairwell where 2 children were climbing toward a room that would not betray them. If you've ever had the past show up with a badge and a story, you know what I did next. I called my lawyer, I pressed record, and I reached for the chain with a hand that didn't shake. Before I could slide it free, my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number, just 3 words that rearranged the air. Check the ledger. Saturday came up clean and mean. I moved like a woman setting a stage. Trays under every pot, dirt swept, note with the knife zipped into a gallon bag per Sandra's instructions. Camera pointed at the door, code changed. Do not answer unknown knocks. I wrote on a post-it and stuck it by the peephole like a commandment. Jep leaned on my doorframe with a pizza paddle like a medieval shield. Your visitor's still on. At noon, I said. No detours. If their parents show, we don't. He nodded. Inspector stopped by last week with a ruler, he said like it was related. I told him rulers don't measure character. He wrote me up anyway. Then we'll be extra charming, I said, and lined up plates. I baked cookies because Emma once said I made good ones, and sometimes you have to offer the past a better memory. At 11:58, a silver sedan I'd never seen pulled to the curb. 2 heads in the back seat, tense as arrows. Lydia at the wheel, sunglasses and a face that said, pretend I'm a rideshare. The kids stepped out like they'd practiced not rattling. Emma reached me first and then stopped, uncertain, as if touching me might break everything we were building. I opened my arms. She folded into them like a decision. Over her shoulder I saw Tony, taller than his father now, standing with his hands jammed in his sweatshirt pockets the way James used to when he'd done something brave and didn't know if it counted. You look like your mother, I told Emma, and then because truth has to be whole but kinder. She huffed a laugh and swiped at her face. Tony let me pull him in with one arm, awkward and perfect. Inside, they stood in the little square of kitchen and tried not to stare at the jungle. It smells like, Tony started. Alive, I said. On the counter, please and thank you. He grinned, and for a second I saw the boy who would have built blanket forts in my living room if anyone had let him. We sat. Lydia stayed in the car like a sentinel. I poured milk like a cliché because clichés are true enough to earn their place. Dad says you're mad at us, Tony blurted through a mouthful of chocolate chip. I'm mad at history, I said. You two didn't write it. Emma took a deep breath, reached into her tote, and set down a stack of papers held together with a binder clip the size of a prayer. I found these in the desk in Dad's office, she said. I wasn't snooping, she added quickly, which is what honest girls say before they save your life. The top page was a statement. Millbrook Credit Union Education Savings, $529. My name appeared in a column labeled contributor more times than I remembered. The current balance, $0,000. A transfer out, $12,500. Date matched the morning I'd seen a deposit notification on Jessica's phone. Retainer. I felt the room tilt and held the table with both hands. I thought that money was for me, Emma said, voice thinner now. For college. It was, I said. It still is, even if it left the account. Tony slid a flash drive across the table like contraband. This was in the garage, he said. In a box labeled photos. It's not photos. What is it? Spreadsheets, he said. Invoices, a folder called Bellweather. I didn't open them. I didn't want to mess something up. You did exactly right, I said, and placed the drive where the knife note had been on the calendar of my kitchen table in a square marked Saturday in boxy letters. Emma pulled out her phone. There's more, she said, eyes flicking toward the door like truth might knock. I recorded Mom last night. I know it's wrong to record people, I know. But she was on the phone and I could hear her through the vent. She said your name. She said ledger like it had teeth. Play it, I said, not because I wanted to hear but because wanting is beside the point when you're building a case. Static, then Jessica's voice, sharp and controlled. I don't care what Thornfield said, Caleb. You said you had another attorney. We are not letting that woman rewrite the narrative. The ledger has to disappear. Monday, we file the petition. You promised me. A low male voice, smooth with confidence that had never been corrected. I'll handle it. Don't use names on the phone. Jessica again, lower now, intimate in a way that made Emma flinch. You'll come by after. James has late shift. Don't make me wait. Emma stopped the recording with a thumb that wanted to shake. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know if I should show you. You should, I said. You did. Caleb, a name to staple to a face I didn't yet have. Consultant, lover, saboteur. The triangle snapped into place. A lawyer who declined, a second who didn't, and a man who did dirty work between billing cycles. My phone lit up with a text from Sandra. Process server just filed ex parte guardianship petition. No hearing yet. They're going to try to serve you today. Don't open the door. As if the universe worked for her, the buzzer sounded. 3 long, insistent blasts. Tony froze. Emma grabbed my wrist. I pressed a finger to my lips. Jep's voice rose through the floorboards, booming. Reading hour. Nobody answers on reading hour. The buzzer stopped and then a voice carried up the stairwell, officious and nasal. MS. Margaret Williams, we have legal documents for you. Please accept service voluntarily. Leave them under the door, I called back. Counsel will respond. A mutter, footsteps, then the soft kiss of an envelope hitting wood. The kids exhaled like I'd taught them a magic trick. Eat another cookie, I said. Not because of stress, because it's Saturday. Emma smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. Grandma, she said, and it hurt and healed the same way all good medicine does. Are we safe here? As long as we act like we are, I said. That means no yelling, no posting, no answering calls you don't want. You come and go like ghosts. You tell me the truth even when it stings. Tony nodded and reached for a second cookie like a boy who wanted to believe sugar could fix anything. The buzzer went again. This time, not a process server's patience. A knock that didn't deserve the word, fists on wood, a drum of entitlement. Open the door, Maggie. Jessica's voice. Honey dipped in glass. The kids are coming home. Emma's face went white. I shook my head once. Lydia texted, I'm on the stairs, don't open. Sandra's 5 minutes out. Mrs. Williams, a deeper voice boomed, male, smug. Caleb Voss here, family consultant. We can make this easy. Caleb, the phone lover, became a knock. I looked at the children who had carried truth into my kitchen and felt something old and useful rise from a place I hadn't reached in years. Sir, said through the door, voice steady, the only easy thing here would be you leaving. Jessica's tone slid. You're kidnapping minors now. Emma rolled her eyes so hard I nearly clapped. Mom, stop, she called through the door before I could stop her. We're fine. Open the door, Emma. No. Silence, then the whisper you hear when people decide to escalate, a phone dialing. Somewhere a camera beads sweat. Lydia's knuckles rapped once against the back stair door, our signal. I opened that one and let her slip in. She smelled like cold air and competence. PD on the way, she said. Sandra told them if anyone says kidnapping, they get to hear both minors say no thank you on camera. Cookies? Tony asked, hopeful. Lydia took one like it was tactical. Downstairs, Jep's baritone carried, you got a warrant, you got pizza, if neither, be quiet in my stairwell. I glanced at the envelope on the floor. Emergency petition, temporary guardianship. My name misspelled again. Allegations soft as pudding, vulnerable adult, recent confusion, unstable housing. They'd taken the motel and cut it into a weapon, then ignored the studio above a pizza place where a life was being built one fern at a time. Shoes on the stairs louder. A knock measured in training and authority. Millbrook PD, a voice called, "MS, Williams, could we speak with you?" Emma's hand slid into mine. Tony stood up taller, chin set the way boys learn when they decide to become men in the space of a breath. Lydia tilted her head. "You ready to tell the truth out loud?" She asked the kids. They both nodded. I slipped the chain off the back door to the kitchen, not the one facing the stairwell. The smallness of the choice felt like strategy. I opened it enough to show faces, not furniture. 2 officers stood there, one older, one too new to hide his curiosity. Behind them, Jessica in a blazer and fury, and a man who fit his voice, Caleb Voss, expensive casual, eyes that counted. "MS. Williams," the older officer said, professional kind. "We got a call. We need to verify everyone's safe." "Come around to the kitchen door," I said. "We'll speak where there are witnesses." They did. Jessica reached for the threshold like she could own physics. I held up a hand. "Officers only. You don't get to bar a mother from her children," she hissed. "I do when they're with their grandmother by invitation," I said. The older cop cleared his throat. "Kids, you okay here?" Emma stepped forward. "Yes, sir," she said, clear as a bell. "We're here because we want to be. Tony, we're not in danger, we're eating cookies." The young officer hid a smile and then remembered his job. "Ma'am, there's also an allegation you're not in a position to make decisions for yourself. Temporary guardianship petition." "Filed, not granted," Lydia said from my shoulder, holding up Sandra's card like a badge. "Counsel of record. You'll get an email in 10 minutes. Caleb's jaw flexed. Jessica's eyes flicked toward him like they'd planned a smoother scene. "MS. Williams," the older cop said, "do you want these folks to leave?" "Yes," I said. He nodded. "Then folks, unless you've got a court order that says otherwise, you need to clear the stairwell. Now." Caleb took a step like a man who wanted to test physics. The officer shifted his weight just enough. "Now," he repeated. Jessica tried a different tone, soft and dangerous. "Maggie, be reasonable. Family." "Family is what you act like," I said, "not what you say at doors you don't own." They retreated in a cluster of expensive indignation. The officers took names and cards and softened their edges when they saw the plants and the kids and the plate of cookies that kept getting smaller because Tony copes like his grandmother, with lists and sugar. At the door, the older one paused. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you need anything tonight, you call. Domestic stuff gets loud before it gets quiet." When they were gone, Emma let out a sound that had been stuck in her chest since she was 10. Tony sat hard and covered his face with both hands, then peeked through his fingers like a child who wants to control the reveal. "We're okay," I told them. "We will keep being okay, that's a practice." Lydia checked her watch. "Sandra's around the corner. We'll file a response tonight and a police report on the knife note." "The drive goes to me, cop is back to you. No originals in this apartment." I nodded and turned to the oven because people need 2 kinds of heat, legal and kitchen. The timer went off. I slid a tray out, set it on the stove, watched chocolate settle into itself. The buzzer sounded again, not impatient, not harsh. 3 cool, measured taps, followed by a text on my phone from a number I didn't know. "Tell Jessica I'm done covering her. If she calls again, I take everybody down with her." See. I stared at the letters until they made a different shape. Caleb Voss had just flinched, and people who flinch start talking. "MS Williams, Millbrook County Sheriff. We have a warrant to search for stolen financial records." "There's no Millbrook County, it's Millbrook Heights, a town inside Fairview County." The detail clicked into place like a round in a chamber. "Slide the warrant under the door," I said, hitting record on my phone and texting Sandra, "Sheriff at door. County wrong. Kids en route, black SUV behind them." Paper whispered across the threshold. I didn't touch it. Lydia texted from the stairwell, "Plates a rental, not county, real PD 5 minutes out." I snapped a photo, no judge's signature, no seal. The case number was a string of zeros that wouldn't fool a bored intern. "Officers," I called, "this won't do. The next people who knock should have a badge I can Google." Silence, shoe scrape, then the voice, less official now. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "Hard is my hobby," I said. Downstairs, Jep banged a pan like a gong. "Reading hour," he roared. "No one disturbs the basil." The buzzer went. 3 soft taps on the back door, our signal. I cracked it for Lydia. Behind her, the alley was empty and honest. "Real police 1 block out," she murmured. "Sandra says don't open for anyone in sunglasses." Emma and Tony's heads appeared at the bottom of the back stairs, cheeks pink from running. Jep barred the alley like a myth. I hauled the kids inside, hit the bolt, and handed them water because people need something to hold when the world gets loud. The stairwell exploded with authority, the kind you don't have to announce. "Fairview County PD," a voice called. "Everyone step away from the door." I opened to uniforms that matched the website. Behind them, the black SUV idled like shame. Two men in plain clothes melted toward it and drove away, slow enough to memorize. The older officer from yesterday tipped his chin at me. "Ma'am," he said, "you've got admirers." "Ex-admirers," I said. The real officers took photos of the fake warrant, the knife note from last night my camera feeds. If anyone shows again with cosplay badges, the older one said, "Don't answer, don't argue, dial us." When it got quiet, my phone vibrated with a number I didn't know and a message I hadn't expected. Check the ledger. No name. 3 words. Caleb, Lydia guessed. Or someone who wants us to think so. I looked at the vault receipt in my wallet, box 317, and at the kids sitting at my table like a promise I hadn't known I'd kept. "We go together," I said. "No detours." At the bank, the manager's eyebrows rose, then lowered when Sandra's card appeared. He walked us to the vault himself. I slid the key, lifted the lid. Ledger on velvet, the weight of what outlives men. "Where?" I whispered. Lydia ran her finger down the inside cover, then stopped. "Here," she said, prying up the cloth at the hinge with a nail file. Under the lining, a narrow envelope lay like a vein. M.W. in Robert's hand. Inside, a 1-page letter and 2 things that weren't paper, a USB drive the size of a thumbnail and a second key with a tag stamped box 512. "If you found this," the letter read, "you looked where I knew you'd look when you were done being polite." The drive mirrors the ledger and the account flow that man Collier thought I couldn't trace. Box 512 holds my note with V. Harrison. "If I didn't get there, you take it, she'll know. Maggie, don't spend your dignity to save anyone's face. Spend the money, buy yourself a front door no one can shut on you again." R. Sandra exhaled like a woman who enjoys being right. "We copy the drive," she said. "We don't keep original media at home, and we go to 512. Box 512 yielded a single sealed envelope with expensive weight. To Victoria H. Across the flap, Robert had written, "If I'm gone, give this to my wife." I slid it to Lydia. "We deliver," I said, "today." Victoria Harrison received us in a house that could teach a museum how to stand up straight. She slit the envelope with a letter opener shaped like a spear and read, lips moving slightly like a person who honored words. When she finished, she looked at me as if taking a new measurement. "Your husband saved me from a very stupid sale 20 years ago," she said. "He advised me to hold when everyone said unload. I did. I'm wealthier for it." She tapped the letter. "He asks me here to return the favor." "What kind of favor?" I asked. "A short list of people," she said, sliding a paper across. 3 names, Collier, Bellwether's registered agent, and Caleb Voss. Bank routing numbers, dates, then Harrison Estate, a line I didn't expect. "I'm persuadable," she said. "It's too big for me now if I sell. I prefer the house go to someone who has a use for corridors." "He says you do." "I have plants," I said, throat tight. "And a life that's learning to fit its own shape." "Good," she said, smiling with her eyes. "Make me an offer that tastes like commitment." "Cash," I said before fear could take the microphone. Below asking, quick close. She cocked her head. "You don't have cash." "Not yet," I said. "But I have a warehouse, an SBA officer who sleeps at her desk, 2 letters of intent, and a business model that turns waste into a margin the size of your driveway. Give me 90 days to earn my down payment and an option memorandum that says you won't take a prettier liar." Victoria laughed, not unkindly. "Send your banker," she said. "And send me your manual. If your protocol is sloppy, I'll know your life is too." What followed wasn't montage, but it wants to be told like one. Eleanor ran the SBA gauntlet with me until signatures bled. Sarah doubled pickups and introduced me to 2 more garden centers that whispered bellweather like a sin. Tommy learned to cut rot without cutting life. The bank underwriter asked what I'd do if the market tanked. I told him plants and people recover on rhythm, not miracles. He wrote approved like a man surprised to rediscover belief. Sandra hand-walked the packet from her office to the DA. The USB drive sang an ugly song. Collier resigned to pursue opportunities and then to cooperate. Caleb sat for a second recorded session and named invoices like a man unloading weight. Jessica posted a photo of a latte. James sent a text that said, "I can help," and then another that said, "Tell me how." 93 days after box 512, I wired a number to Victoria Harrison that made my hands steady instead of shaky. Cash offer. She slid a pen across a table that had seen treaties. "Make the house earn its keep," she said. "Houses want laughter like plants want air." The day the paper recorded the transfer, a black SUV rolled slow past the new gate like a man checking his work. The next morning, the bell rang. Through the camera, James stood shifting from foot to foot. Jessica arranged her mouth. Emma and Tony hovered, wary and brave. The marble under my feet remembered another foyer. I opened the door but not the screen. "Well," I said, "look who knows the address." "Mom," James said. No," I said, "you'll listen first." I led them, Emma and Tony, around to the kitchen entrance because kitchens are where truth keeps its boots. Jessica tried to follow. I held up a hand. Not you, I said. You've got a court date and a consultant who texted me that he's done covering you. Her jaw ticked. You can't keep me from my children. I won't, I said. The state might. Emma took my hand. Tony found the cookies without looking. I set a glass of milk down like a ritual and turned to James. You're going to make 3 calls, I said. 1 to the bank that holds your mortgage. You'll ask for forbearance and you'll accept a budget. 1 to the DA. You'll offer what you know about Collier and Bellweather. And 1 to your children. That call will be in person, at my table, with no lawyer and no wife. You will tell them exactly what you did and why. You will not use the word stress as a noun. He swallowed. And then you'll show up to the job you don't have yet on time for a year, I said. You'll live somewhere you can afford. You'll stop using my name for anything but invitations. You'll demonstrate the difference between sorry and change. He closed his eyes, opened them. Okay, Jessica laughed brittle. She thinks she's a judge now. No, I said. A woman at her own front door. She leaned forward, voice low. This isn't over. It is for you, I said, unless you decide to grow. She turned on her heel and left, the SUV swallowing her like a mouth. Emma and Tony stayed for an hour, then 2, then for Saturday mornings that smelled like cinnamon and plans. We toured the greenhouse conservatory that felt like a cathedral for chlorophyll. Tommy brought up cuttings like a boy showing his first rocket. We put their names on a shelf, Emma's corner, Tony's bench. People become keepers of what they build. When they left that day, James lingered at the top of the steps like a man studying a door he finally wanted to knock on the right way. I gave Sandra my statement, he said. I told the kids the truth. Emma cried. Tony didn't. I think that's worse. You'll survive worse if you make something of it, I said. He nodded toward the hill view. You really can see the old neighborhood from here. You really can, I said. It's good to remember where the light comes from. He started down, then turned back. Can I call you tomorrow? You can, I said. And you can show up with a lunch you cooked yourself and a budget on paper that isn't aspirational math. He smiled, crooked like when he was 8 and missing a tooth. Okay. I watched them drive away, Jessica somewhere else. James in the Civic that still felt like honesty, Emma and Tony, waving without embarrassment. The gate shut with a soft mechanical dignity. Inside, the house learned our names. The conservatory took a deep breath. The kitchen remembered how to be loud. I put the Harrison estate deed next to the Phoenix manual and the ledger receipt and allowed myself a thin slice of satisfaction, served warm. Some victories shout. This one hummed. Not revenge, exactly, though I'd be lying if I said the view didn't taste like a lesson. It was something smaller and larger, like finding your own house key in the pocket you thought was empty. If you've ever been told to be reasonable while someone tried to take your life with a clipboard, hear me. Write your rules, stack your evidence, make your offers in cash and boundaries. And if these stories move you the way they moved me, like this video and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. We tell the truth, people fence off with hedges. That night, the doorbell rang once more, late enough to be impolite, early enough to be important. On the step sat an envelope with no return, addressed in a hand I recognized. Maggie, it began. I filed a complaint. Collier's going to talk. If you want to hear everything, come to the diner on Route 9 tomorrow at 8. Bring the ledger's copy. Don't bring Sandra. See. I looked at the house around me, the one my husband told me to buy with my dignity, and felt the old gear in my chest notch forward. Some doors you open because it's your address. Some you open because finished lines are just starting lines wearing lipstick.